Lauren, the theme for today's podcast is what's new. To address this topic, I'm going to steal a gimmick that Shel Kapadia uses on the Ringer NFL show. I have 5 questions for you. In no particular order, I'd like you to pick a number, and I'll ask you to answer the question that corresponds to that number. Again, there are 5 questions. Are you ready?
Yes, I think I'm ready.
Okay, pick a number between 1 and 5.
Let's do number 3 to start.
Oh, you started with a good one. What's new with uniform guidance?
So last week, the Federal Register released a proposed rule on uniform guidance, which would basically completely redo the way that the federal government thinks about grants, federal funding, etc. There's a lot of buzz in the community about it, and ASN is really aware of it, and we're currently assessing how the society will respond.
Yeah, and I think it's important that not only will ASN respond, but as an individual entity, but I think many members of the community will also respond. And I think we'll also be part of joint responses. And I anticipate this is going to be a fair amount of back and forth because the proposal really is dramatic in terms of the role of the federal government in managing, some would even say micromanaging grants. At the same time, I think the administration would say it's federal funding and shouldn't they have more of a say? So it's going to be a really interesting, I would think, summer discussion. I know it's a pretty quick turnaround, and there's a proposal to extend the deadline as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see if the federal government does wind up extending that comment period, given the amount of publicity it's having in every community at the moment.
All right, time to pick another number. So 3 is off the board.
So three's off the board. Let's go to two.
Wow, you have a theme here which shows your regulatory roots. What's new with these 3 proposed rules? Batelli Spring E&M comment period, ESRD PPS QIP, Medicare physician fee schedule.
Wow, you basically just outlined my entire next upcoming 3 months. Each year, the federal rulemaking season has what we call the busy season, and it starts around early June, really in July, where all those proposed rules are announced. So I'll start with the first one. On June 8th, Batel's spring endorsement and maintenance period opens. This is an opportunity for ASN to weigh in on quality measures that appear in the various Medicare programs. For example, all of your ESRD PPS QIP measures are in there, as well as some of the physician fee schedule measures. I had the opportunity to kind of get a little bit of a preview of the measures that we're going to be commenting on this year, and stay tuned, but there are a few transplant ones, as well as a few updates to a few existing quality measurement programs in the ESRD PPS QIP. So ASN is currently working with the quality committee to form our comments for that one, and those will be due June 21st. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, but we are going to hit the ground running with those. In terms of the ESRD PPS QIP proposed rule itself, as well as the Medicare physician fee schedule, those are two of the biggest payment rules that we at ASN address with the Quality Committee. The ESRD PPS QIP, for those who are not familiar, is the rule that determines dialysis facility payments as well as the quality incentive program. That one is typically dropped in early July, and it comes to the 60-day comment period. So it's all hands on deck reading through those thousands of pages of proposals and combing through what's going to be relevant to the ASN membership. I can give a little bit of a preview. It's hard to say what exactly is going to be in those rules, but I will share that this year MedPAC, which is the Medicare Advisory Commission, who makes recommendations to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid on what payment rates should be updated, did unfortunately recommend that the ESRD base rate for the ESRD BPS QIP would not see an increase. So we'll just have to wait and see. When it comes to the Medicare physician fee schedule, that one comes a little bit after the ESRD PPS QIP that establishes all of your Medicare physician payment, as well as all of the quality measurement in the MIPS program. That one's a bit controversial because this is going to be the second year that we see two conversion factors, one for physicians that practice in advanced payment models and one that is not. And the goal of the government to split those two conversion factors is to incentivize participation in APMs. So we're going to have to see how much that gap widens as time goes on. We'll also have to pay attention to what the efficiency adjustment has and the impact that's going to have on non-time-based codes. And then we'll have to see if there's any new quality measurement within the MIPS program. I know it's a lot, but that pretty much is an overview of my summer.
Yeah, so just to unpack a little bit of what you said, I think what's important is we're talking about 3 kind of related proposed rules. And basically, the process is that in this case, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, statutorily, if they want to make changes, they have to propose what those changes would be. Sometimes part of that is implementing legislative requests that Congress has approved and the president has signed. They then propose the rule. They have to give an adequate enough time. And for these, there's usually about a 60-day turnaround for the community to respond. And again, ASN responds individually and collectively quite often. As you mentioned, the ASN Quality Committee, which is our sort of group of federal regulatory experts, helps develop those, and their names and information are on the website. If you just Google ASN Quality Committee, they're actually going to be meeting in ASN's office in July to spend time in person going through a lot of this information. And then we will respond, as will the community. And then usually around Kidney Week this year, because Kidney Week's a bit earlier, it'll be after Kidney Week, close to Thanksgiving. The CMS will issue final rules. Every now and then, maybe every 5 years, they might do a revised proposed rule. I haven't seen that very often, but it does happen. But usually they put out the final rules, and then the new policy goes into place January 1st. So it's a very, on the one hand, it feels like a long process. On the other hand, when it's your summer, it doesn't. And I can't resist making the joke that hurricane season's timed with the rulemaking season. So anything that I just said that you want to add to, or should we move on to the next question?
We can move on to the next question, but the hurricane analogy is really funny because that is exactly how it feels when you're getting a bunch of proposed rules dropped, usually the weekend of 4th of July.
Yeah, no, it's just struck me for a long time that that's sort of the analogy here. Okay, so 2 and 3 are off the board. What's your next number?
Let's do four.
4, what's new with the kidney care choices model? So I'm impressed that you've managed to go regulatory,
Oh
regulatory,
my gosh.
regulatory, which just tells me your instincts that you like regulatory policy.
Yes, I love regulatory policy. So the kidney care choices model. So ASN has been incredibly involved in the development and seeing how the kidney care choices model has changed over time. It is a value-based care model that was launched by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation back in 2022. And it recently was announced that the model, the ETC part of the model, will be ending soon. So that kind of leaves the future of the KCC model up in the air. So ASNs, we wanted to continue to see value-based care in this space. With the quality committee, we sat down and we analyzed the current kidney care choices model. Our letter to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation Services outlined the components of the model that nephrologists were a fan of, the components that we think that we could see improvement on, and then we also offered a few new ideas for CMMI to consider as they develop future models. After we submitted the letter, we actually had the opportunity to meet with leaders at CMMI and express some of those ideas. And the conversation went really well, and it has opened the door to our relationship with CMMI and building a strong relationship with regulators. And I'm really excited to see what comes next.
Just so I'm clear, who was in the meeting at CMMI? Was it just ASN and CMMI, or were there other members of the community that participated in that discussion?
Yeah, so it was ASN leaders, so a few members of both the ASN Quality Committee, the ASN Policy and Advocacy Committee, as well as the ASN Transplant Policy Committee. And then on the CMMI end, it was Abe Sutton, who's the director of CMMI, Tom Duval, who oversees all kidney care models, and then a few of their colleagues that work on things like data and authorization, standards, and stuff like that.
And can you just give us a sense during the discussion, if you were to interpret sort of the CMMI perspective on this? I know that's hard to do, just from a sort of overall philosophical approach, how would you describe it?
I would say that CMMI is incredibly interested in advancing kidney models. I think Abe Sutton in particular has always been very interested in continuing the kidney care models. And I think now that we are in this administration and Abe Sutton is back, I think he wants to continue to see improvements in the model. And I think this is a really good sign that ASN is going to have a strong opportunity to influence those models moving forward. And he really was there to listen to our physician leaders and engage and have a very good open conversation.
Yeah, and I should say before we move on that Abe was a recipient of the ASN President's Medal when we recognized a number of HHS staff and political appointees back in 2019. Okay, you can pick either 1 or 5.
Let's do one.
Okay, so what's new with the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force?
I think the biggest thing with the United States Preventative Task Force Service right now is that they're accepting new nominations for members, which is something that we haven't seen in a few years.
Yeah, it's interesting because the administration has raised a lot of concerns about USPSTF, and I think part of that relates to the fact that it was established under the Affordable Care Act. So there is a political component here. I think the other piece, perhaps, is that there's concerns that it was really designed from the perspective of experts in the data as opposed to experts in specific diseases like kidney diseases. So there's not a nephrologist, which is there's different theories as to how to organize these types of entities. I do think it's unclear as to how this is going to move forward, but to my knowledge, I don't think they've met since the administration started in January of 2025. Is that right?
Yeah, they have not met. Usually they meet twice a year, and every meeting has been canceled.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions is, will they meet in the future? And then the other is, because they've solicited nominations, are they going to really change the composition? And if they change the composition, will the kind of philosophy behind USPSTF change?
Yeah, and I think it's important to build off one of the points that you made that previously they were very data-based. One thing that I noticed in the proposal or call for nominations is that they explicitly call out that they're looking for specialties or specialists. And they list a few specialists, including nephrology, which I thought was incredibly interesting. And I think this will be important to see how it plays out because, as a reminder, the USPSTF still hasn't made an ultimate decision on the kidney disease screening guideline. So it'll be interesting to see how that relates to these new nominations and how that plays out in the future.
Yeah, and especially since there's been so much innovation, particularly around rare kidney diseases, and then the link with cardiovascular kidney metabolic, it seems like the landscape has really shifted over the last few years. And if you did have a nephrologist on the task force, perhaps, they may change or go in a direction of recommending screening for people at risk for kidney diseases.
Agreed. I think that voice is going to be very important in that conversation.
No, we did nominate someone. Do you want to let us know who we nominated?
Yeah, so we nominated Dr. Deirdre Cruz, who is a former president of ASN, and that is incredibly exciting because I think she really checks all of the boxes. She's a nephrologist and also a very passionate epidemiologist and has contributed a lot in research. So I think we chose a great candidate.
Yeah, I mean, she's also a member of the National Academy of Medicine, which I think is an important part of this as well in terms of just, national and international credibility. All right, you're down to number five. Do you want me to tell you what number five is?
Yes.
What's new with the American Medical Association?
Oh, I feel like I should be interviewing you for this one, but we will be taking flight, I believe, tomorrow and heading out to Chicago for the American Medical Association's annual meeting.
Yeah, so it's interesting because AMA meets twice a year. So they have their annual meeting in June, and then they have their interim meeting in November. And this is ASN's fourth year as a member of the AMA. And the other nephrology organization is the Renal Physicians Association. So we try to work closely with them in terms of making sure that the issues that are of importance to nephrologists are well represented. I think the nuance is that there's also other specialties with which we work. So the American Society of Transplant Surgeons, because there is a fair amount of transplant activity. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with cardiovascular kidney metabolic, working with those specialties as well. And then the other piece of this is there are the physician representatives, there are the staff experts like yourself in terms of the policy issues, and then there are my counterparts in terms of the CEOs of the different organizations. And we're all interacting throughout the weekend and beyond just around issues of mutual interest and as things come up, and it really is sort of a fascinating, they describe it as the house of medicine, and it really is interesting. So what are some of the topics that you're most focused on in terms of potential resolutions?
Oh, so my colleague Rachel Meyer and I have kind of divided and conquered the different reference committees resolutions. I actually finished up reference committee A, which I think is medical practice. And I think that there's a lot of proposals related to Medicare Advantage, particularly regulating Medicare Advantage a little bit more. One of the big topics of discussion in this administration right now as it relates to Medicare Advantage is whether or not the government should auto-enroll everyone into a Medicare Advantage plan. So there is a AMA resolution that opposes that and encourages AMA to either consider legislation or more advocacy to prevent that. The next one that stood out to me is one on CMMI models. So that KCC letter that we are talking about earlier, there's a resolution out that is encouraging CMMI to have more physician input in the development of models, which I think would be great for our membership. And it offers a few ways that they can do that through the PTAC committee, which is a physician advisory committee for models, or maybe just having more physicians on staff at CMMI as they think about these models. So I think those are two important ones for our memberships that I've seen so far.
Yeah, the two that not the resolutions, but the two aspects of the meeting that I would focus on. One is there is a transplant caucus, and we work with the ASTS on sort of making sure that if there are any transplant related issues, and there usually are in terms of living donation and things, that we're working together on those with other organizations interested in transplant policy. The second thing is, as I mentioned, my counterparts at other societies are there. And so we have sort of two meetings. One is a group of sort of the CEOs of the largest medical specialty societies and ASNs, part of that discussion. And that's a really interesting look into what some of the larger organizations like the American College of Physicians are doing and how we can be helpful working with ACP or primary care issues or with other specialty societies like the American College of Cardiology, if we're thinking about cardiovascular, kidney, metabolic. And then AMA convenes something called the Federation, where it's all the medical specialty societies at a national level and all the state medical societies. And so you can imagine what that dynamic's like and the issues there. And it's a way to get a sense as to some of the things behind the scenes that AMA is doing. They have a relatively new CEO. He's been in the job a little under a year. And so I think that's another sort of piece of this is the organization is changing, with new leadership. Any other comments on AMA or any other of the five questions you want to go back to, or are we at a good point to close out?
I think we're at a good point to close out. I think I'm excited for Chicago. It'll be my first time in the Windy City, so that will be something to look forward to. But it's a busy summer ahead of us.
Yeah, I would agree. And we'll just call it hurricane season moving forward. And
I like that.
yeah, I should also say that we've been joined this week by Paul Renner, who's our policy intern this summer. So on a future episode, we'll start to give Paul an opportunity to ask us questions and see what he's experiencing during his internship, but we'll save that for the future. So, Lauren, I look forward to hanging out in the Windy City with you this weekend.
Perfect, you too.
This podcast should not be used in any medical emergency or for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition. If you have any questions about any medical condition or before taking any drug, changing your diet, or commencing or discontinuing any course of treatment, please consult your doctor or another qualified healthcare professional. Views expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of the American Society of Nephrology.